I've been actively harassed, stalked, death threats, like the whole nine online. And so there was a long period of time where I didn't feel safe online.
Welcome to the Alpha Podcast, made possible by West Coast Customs and NVRLand Studios, hosted by me, Jussup. Before we begin, I want to remind everybody that what you're about to hear is not financial advice, nor do we endorse any of the guests or projects on the show. This is simply meant for educational purposes, and oftentimes I'm learning about these projects in real time as we're recording them. While this is brought to you by West Coast Customs and NVRLand Studios, the opinions expressed are of my own or the guests, and not of the companies. So without further ado, let's tap into the episode.
Pleasure. We're here at Bitcoin Miami. So my name's SX Noir, and I am the thought leader of sex technology. I work on the intersection of sexuality and technology, which is any technology that enhances the human experience of sexuality. So as you can imagine, it's quite expansive. It goes from anything from health, wellness, entertainment, arts, culture, business, and just technical innovation. The sex industry has led innovation within the internet, period. So, sex tech is one of the leading industries that we need to acknowledge and embrace.
How does that translate into Web3 space?
Yeah. Look, I did this is Web3. Web3. So it translates in a big way, right? So essentially, like some of the barriers that we have within the current system of Web2 is trust management, right? People consider sex a vice industry, whether it literally be education or like women's rights around their bodies, right? Like there's so much barriers to the way that Web2 is run to the sex industry. So when I say sex industry, yes, it does include sex workers and the plight that they've endured, but it also includes basically anything around gender expression, our health, our wellness, like anything around that as well. It includes the entertainment, the fun part, the gaming, the VR, the AR, things like that as well.
Interesting.
So how it connects to Web3, well, actually, normally I connect it to like blockchain tech, which we've discovered are kind of two different things. So blockchain technology really solves some of the issues that we have within sex tech as far as having decentralized banking, NFTs, and utility around the NFTs really helps within trust management. So right now, centralized banking does not accept sex at all. They consider it vice and they say, nope. We're not going to touch it. And also like within our arts and culture, with the invention of tube sites and the invention of big tech stealing from the normal person using it, we have no accountability for sexuality. All they do is delete us, they tell us you can't be here, and then they just steal our content. So whether it be education, whether it be adult services or adult entertainment, anything like that.
So how did you stumble into Web3?
I go into a lot of rooms and talk a lot of shit.
Rooms as in clubhouse?
No,
just
like
real
spaces.
Rooms.
No, just spaces.
Oh, okay, spaces.
So my favorite thing to do, which is actually how I met Mike, is just ask a very not out of the not a crazy question, but a really pointed question to the panelists. And I like to break the fourth wall between people thinking they're these superior technologists. And it's like, no, we're all humans. We put our shoes on one at a time. And we all have things that trouble us and that worry us. And so I like to talk about the conflict that is within Web3. I think there's a lot of virtue signaling and everything's going to be great, which is beautiful. But with greatness comes challenges, and I feel like we need space to talk about those challenges. So how I got into it was my community, as in the sex tech industry, was very weary of the future of Web3, very, very weary. They're like, what does that mean? How is it different from the current system? And so I like to just open up that conversation and not make it so scary and celebrate alongside.
With greatness comes a lot of these things, and I think we actually were having this conversation earlier. What's interesting about this space is I've noticed that there's parallels in, with Mike, we call ourselves degens, and there's a lot of parallels in gambling. From the outside, you see a lot of people that look at it and it's like, oh, there's going to be scams and there's bad actors, and we see rug pulls happening and stuff like that. And I think whenever you have an industry that parallels things that can have that kind of negative connotation, you're going to have bad actors exploiting it. What were you going to say?
No, I think, and this is the reason why the sex tech industry needs to be the center of it, because we've consistently innovated against bad actors.
Right.
We've consistently pushed the boundaries of what's accepted and the values that we have. And so I feel like we know there's bad actors.
Right.
It's not a question of, oh my God, I can't believe that happened. It's like we almost expect having bad actors. And so something like my background is actually understanding legislation in America that impacts sexuality online. So that's I'm a sex worker activist. I organized the largest sex worker march in history. And so we are consistently navigating conflict within digital spaces and within humanity with people. And so bad actors are inevitable. And I think something that the sex industry does very well is practice harm reduction, as in when something happens, not if, when it happens, we can move forward in a way that like transcends the conversation and not get stuck and not cancel and not, one of the biggest problems within projects or rug pulls or all these words is interpersonal conflict between one or the other. And with this new world that we're in, within Web2 and everyone being so connected, mass communication, etc., people are so sensitive, especially my generation. People are so sensitive. And I'm not saying like Republican, Democrat sensitive. I'm saying just quite literally, we are constantly in this bubble online that reaffirms everything we do. And not only that, but if you're so palatable, and I use that word intentionally, that you have a virality or a lot of followers, you believe that you are in stronger power than someone who doesn't. And I'm hoping that Web3 shifts that on its head, because we don't need to reach thousands of people. We need to reach 3 people, 4 people, 5 people, right? And I think that that's kind of what we need to embrace for our mental health. I mean, our generation is the most lonely and depressed generation to come, and that's not a coincidence.
I mean, you're talking about things that I find that doesn't get talked a lot about in this space in general.
Yeah.
And it's something that I'm very, very passionate about. Because I mean, it's talked about. It's like it's cool to stay up all night, do degen things and like neglect your health. And I don't think that's talked about near enough. And then it's leading to being more depressed, more lonely. And these in real life events have been awesome because it's allowed people to connect. But I think there is a way that we can still connect online, but we can't forget about we have bodies, we have minds.
We can't forget humanity, and this is why humanity will always exist and always push forward, and we always will need physical touch. We always need community. And so I always, my catchphrase is I'm the Oprah of sex tech, right? So people ask me, how are you a technologist? And I'm like, I bring the social and empathetic conversations to what we're talking about. I asked, one of my biggest things around like Web2 and Web3 is like everyone is really into virality. Everyone's really into this idea that if I just work hard enough, I'm going to be so popular and so cool that everyone's going to love me. And it's like, to me, I think that's a centralized concept. And I feel like a lot of people are using centralized solutions for decentralized innovation. And I say that strategically because they're the same people who have been in power creating the same thing. And so I like to go into rooms and fuck it up and say, hey, who are you? Why should we listen to you? Like, what are your challenges? What are your successes? And just like having that empathetic conversation, because we all want to be so cool and so smart. But like, like Mike says, like we're kids, like we're in our inner child, like how do we feel about this? And like we can lean into that understanding. And so when I start talking to people about it, they expect me to be an engineer or a coder or, and they put me in this box like almost immediately. And I'm like, fuck that box. No. And I talk about things and I host events and I have conversations. And right now, if you're listening, I'm fundraising for my talk show podcast situation where I just interview people and I ask them real questions like, what'd you have for breakfast? What makes you happy? Like these things, because when we're talking to developers, we're talking to engineers, we're talking to thought leaders. That's my thing, THOT leaders. We're dreamers, okay? Like we're thinking about something we want to see in the world, and God, you have the courage to go and do that. Like that's really big. It's not something that's simple. And even when you're staying up all night online, like you're wanting to see something, and so you're spending your time investing in that, and that's powerful. So I like to just give space to that, and I don't think we're as cool as we think we are. I think we're all kind of dorks inside, and we kind of just need to navigate that more.
One of the firm beliefs that I have that's kind of guided me is the only thing that really matters is how you feel about yourself when you're by yourself. Mm-hmm. That goes to kind of what I was hearing you say is like we search for this external acceptance and stuff. And
I think that like, during COVID, not only did the sex tech industry boom because more people were buying toys, more people were connecting on dating sites, right? Yeah. Like they were like, hey, don't be lonely, come connect on dating sites. I think that COVID really destigmatized a lot of our acknowledgement around not only community, but the impact it has on us, right? So when you call your mom, you call your grandma, you get on that Zoom mixer, we all of a sudden were like, damn, that matters. That makes a difference in our lives. And it kind of took away this taboo that like our online lives are weird or strange, or it's not actually real. You can just turn off your laptop and get into the real world and it doesn't matter. We live in a world where we're already in the metaverse. We have a duality of existence in an extreme way. And it's hard. You know, I've been actively harassed, stalked, death threats, like the whole nine online. And so there was a long period of time where I didn't feel safe online. This is just part of the reality because I don't feel safe in real life sometimes. And I feel like this is when we need to have humanity and give space to those really difficult ideas. And honestly, what freaks me out about Web3 is I'm not sure who's thinking about this. I'm not sure who's thinking about the small guy when they're creating things like around security, around surveillance, things of this nature, around tracking, around where the data is held, you know? Because as you look around at the salon event, I don't see one black woman. I don't even see a black person. I don't even see women. So are we thinking about people like me? And that's why I go in the room and I ask that, and people are like, huh, what? And I love that. And then they directly come up to me afterwards and they're like, okay, can we talk about this? And I'm like, yeah, but I would have preferred you set that at the panel so people know you're also thinking about it. It's not a private conversation, right?
Right.
But they're like, yeah, I was depressed, or yeah, you know, I lost this relationship because of this. My wallet got stolen and this happened and I couldn't eat. Like, these are real things that are happening, and we need to give space to the conversation. So again, if you're listening, I'm looking for investors.
Do you collect NFTs? Are you a collector?
I am a collector. Well, actually, I got gifted some ETH a while back, and so I just kind of went crazy and bought several NFTs. My first NFT was Cosmic Paws. It was a Mutnik honoring space travel and the first dogs that kind of died for us to innovate space travel, which is pretty cool. I have a Mongo mug from Mike Mongo, his PFP project, and I also have a Dick Pic NFT. That's a DICKPIX. Basically turning the head on like when someone sends you a dick pic you don't want, and like it's kind of like a counterculture thing. And so it's her name is Jen.
I think I've heard of this actually.
Yeah. Dick pic it's great. And so they have all these like dick pics that are like modeling celebrities like Snoop Dogg, Kim Kardashian, etc. Like I think mine is like hairy balls or something, and it's like a dick and it has like all these like hairs on it, and it's like kind of digital and pixelated. Part of the proceeds go to Planned Parenthood, and there's like a gamification element of like collecting different ones. I think the floor price is I think it's like 0.4. I think that's it. Oh, and I bought all my ETH addresses. So I feel really cool.
Just on that topic though, Jordan Prince, who's one of the developers for Solana, he said he was telling me about this thing called junk mail, where apparently a ton of people just got airdropped a bunch of dicks.
Well, right. And that's what this Dick Pic project is talking about. It's really funny. The Discord is absolutely hilarious. And Jen's a comedian, and so she's really cool. I think she's here actually.
Really?
She'll be at NFT NYC. And so, like within my work, I think people are like, how does sex tech fit into Web3 in these conversations? Just think about it. Yeah. And you'd be so surprised what comes to mind. And, you know, between crypto titties, between Dick Pic, between all these different projects that are around sex tech, it's honestly the underlying technology to almost everything we do.
Well,
you know?
And I would say like throughout COVID, OnlyFans exploded.
Yeah.
But there's going to be a Web3 version of OnlyFans.
Oh my God. Can I cuss on this podcast?
Yeah, you definitely already have.
Oh, Lord.
You're way past that
like,
point.
Can I curse? Fuck. OnlyFans, I love OnlyFans. You guys can like Google me and see all my work, SX Noir, around sex worker activism and digital spaces specifically. We appreciate OnlyFans. We love you. Thanks for giving millions of dollars to performers, but they're fucked up. OnlyFans is a despicable business model. I just went to South by Southwest and we had a panel on adult gig economy, innovating the internet. Absolutely fascinating. I think the only panel like that at South by Southwest. And we just talked about how OnlyFans is just, now it has transcended into a social concept almost, right? That people are just applying to everything, right? So when Beyonce says it in a song, okay, right, we've transcended the understanding of what digital adult gig economies look like. During COVID, everyone was like, oh, wait, I understand the only thing that we have is our body. Okay, great, I'm gonna go do OnlyFans. And so a lot of the DAOs I'm seeing right now are surrounding counterculture to OnlyFans. To me, it's very reductive, and it's honestly kind of...
Explain that to me. What do you...
So there's like, I don't want to like name names because I don't want to really call anyone out because I think what they're doing is brilliant and innovative. But that's what they use. They go, I'm an OnlyFans competitor. And it's just like, to me, it's kind of all you're saying is I'm someone who skims off the top of performers. I'm someone who exploits the community. I'm someone who has such strict terms of service that it actually is borderline violent against performers. It disenfranchises them. It's a trust management issue, like I've mentioned before. So I don't really like when people say that. And so it just has us in a chokehold of understanding. And I feel like it's far more expansive. So as the DAO that I'm creating is going to be called Sex Tech DAO. And essentially, it's going to be far expansive to, of course, including the adult industry, the adult gig economy, but also educators, doctors, performers, all these different levels of sex technology, and also embracing, because right now I'm the president of Women of Sex Tech. I probably should have said that. And a global organization of women pioneering sex tech. And I believe that the future of sex tech is inclusive of everyone, right? Men, women, non-binary, trans, etc., marginalized genders. And so the reason I'm saying all this is because, men have this very narrow view of what sex tech looks like. And they go, oh, it's OnlyFans. And so, but they don't even understand the business model or what the people on the site even think about it. Over 37% of OnlyFans creators make less than $150 a month, right? Yeah. And so it's pretty exploitative.
I would imagine that there's going to be a Web3 version, and then
people are working on it.
Yeah.
People are working on it, but I'm not sure they're as mindful as they could be.
But I think conversations like this is what's going to, what you're doing as far as shaking it up and asking people questions and forcing them to think about things that they may not necessarily think about. Earlier, you said something about us being sensitive, and I think that's where that has the biggest impact, is the fact that we can't have conversations these days, because there's no room for people to say something just out of pure ignorance, and it's okay. That's why we have conversations, so we can grow. Because I may not think about something because my experience doesn't necessarily align with allowing me to see a perspective that you see. Yeah. And if we don't have these conversations, I would never be able to see that. So,
Lord, yeah, I completely agree, and thank you for acknowledging that. I spoke at the blockchain conference at Harvard about 2 weeks ago, and so when I go to these events, I was actually just telling Mike this, when I go to these events, these mixers, these conversations, I have so much anxiety because I have no idea what the person's going to say that I'm speaking to, right? So I have my spiel, I say what I'm going to say, and it either goes two ways. One, they listen and they're like, wow, okay, cool. That's amazing. I'm here, I'm gung-ho about it. Or they go toward a very almost a selfish view of what they believe it is, and then they claim to be offended, and they say, I'm sorry that you're offended, is what they say to me. Because I'm okay with any conversation. You can say nearly almost anything to me, and I'm not a judgmental person at all. I can decide how I'm going to react to that, right? But I'm not a judgmental person, and I believe that the spaces that I hold, no photos, no videos allowed, and I have a very strict code of conduct of accepting people as who they are, accepting their lived experience, being kind and being empathetic is what my rules are. And so people, they ask this question because they're afraid to ask it. And then when you don't respond the way that they want you to, they go, I'm sorry I offended you, and they completely shut down. And so that's the problem. I was at this Harvard dinner, and I'm talking to the person next to me, which we had assigned seating, which is a fucking nightmare. I hate it so much. So I'm talking to the person next to me, I'm telling my story, and, he gets offended. And he literally turns his back to me like this. Because basically, I was telling my story, and he's like, well, I don't understand why sex. Why you want to do sex? And I'm just like, I've already told you. If I was selling water bottles, you wouldn't be grilling me like this. And I kind of said that, and he was just, oh, sorry, I offended you, and turned his back to me. At that point, I'm already over it. So I get up and leave, because I'm just like, I'm a grown-ass woman. I can do what I want. But that tends to be it's 50-50. And so when I go into these spaces, I just kind of sit in the corner and don't really talk to anyone. And people think I'm antisocial, but it's more just I don't know what I'm about to endure. I have no idea what they're gonna say to me, how they're gonna talk to me, and if they're gonna respect me. That's typically what's in these spaces, because they can't handle me. One, I'm a Black woman. Two, I'm not a technologist. So I'm not an engineer, I'm not a coder, I'm not that. And three, you can say anything to me, and I'll go, okay. And that freaks people out. It freaks people out that they can be themselves and ask these questions that they've been so afraid to ask. And I think it's really important that we acknowledge this, because what the sexuality that people are getting with the invention of tube sites is morbid as hell. We're getting all of this distortion of what sexuality is because of not wanting to talk about it. So it gets pushed under the ground, and people have these very intense feelings around sexuality they don't talk about, and it leads into like really harmful ideas around sex. So anyway, that's a whole nother podcast. That's a whole. I could go off on tube sites. The invention of tube sites, y'all. That's an invention. Like, we didn't have free porn all the time. Like, anyway. I digress.
So, what was the last NFT you minted?
Dick pics.
It was dick
pics. Yeah, I haven't minted anything recently. I really want to get more into like the collector conversation around it, but right now it's just a financial barrier. At the end of the day, like, I don't have the extra income to collect. The utility and community aspect of NFTs is something I'm really passionate about, and teaching people in sex tech about it. And I think that NFTs are so empathetic and so cool because we're thinking about the other person and how the other person wants their art to be viewed, right? And that's a really big flaw in Web2 is we took people's agency away. I'm nervous that it's going to be replicated. It's going to be in some ways replicated in Web3, but that's how I see the innovation happening, right? And people like freak out because I like to talk about the social concepts as much as technical, and that's where I think the crypto NFT space is. It's a social conversation. It's a belief. The first currency we ever had was connected to the church. It meant the same thing that minted communion, right? This is mint. The same thing that minted our communion cracker was the same thing we minted money with, right? And it was connected to the church. And so what's our new gospel? What's our new gospel around finances in Web3? And so that's kind of what I'm answering. Is like, there's a trust element to this that we have to have. Otherwise, what are we doing?
Where can people find you?
So y'all can find me. I'm SX Noir, sxnoir.com. SX. So sex without the E.
Okay.
It's a play on censorship because everyone censors sex. So I'm SX, the original SX. You can find me there. You can find me joinwomenofsextech.com, and also Sex Tech Crypto everywhere. I just kind of got that domain. So sextechcrypto.com, Sex Tech Crypto on Twitter. That's probably really where to find me. And also my Venmo is SXBRAT. My Cash App is SXBRAT. Something about me is I have no shame. You can tip me and I'll say hello.
Pick a word.
Thoughtful.
Thoughtful.
THOTFUL.
THOTFUL.
Yes.
All right. Text thoughtful to 406-295-6929. Thank you so much.
It's my pleasure. Yeah. Thank you for having me.
I mean, I talk about having diversity and like a diverse conversation, and this is definitely the most different conversation.
Yeah, I know, well, right, but people really resonate with it. It's kind of funny.
All right, well, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I don't have any alpha advice, y'all, other than support, these empathetic social conversations as much as you support technical. I have no alpha advice, though. No alpha.
All good.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.